Coney Island Creek was once a blight on the city, polluted, toxic, entirely unusable. But since 1972, a slow and steady cleanup has revitalized the creek and surrounding environs.
And it's taken 50 years to get it to the point now where the community can enjoy it. It's a community asset.
Charles Denson has been a resident of Coney Island for 60-plus years. He's also perhaps the neighborhood's most well-known historian. He's documented the creek since he was a child. He's very concerned that a new ferry service landing to be built in the creek could undo all this progress.
And after watching 60 years of improvements on the creek and watching it become this incredible community asset, it's so tragic that it's ending with this project, which will pretty much destroy the public access to Coney Island Creek.
The project started back in 2019, and it's part of Mayor de Blasio's efforts to increase ferry service citywide. When the city's Economic Development Corporation, or EDC, did a citywide survey of residents to determine where a new ferry service landing should go, the answer was...
So over 60% of respondents were asking for ferry service in Coney Island.
James Wong is the executive director of the EDC's ferry division. The EDC chose the creek for several reasons, including the fact that it is relatively deep water and the existing Kaiser Park Pier would make construction cheaper.
One of the things we wanted to make sure that we were doing with this ferry landing is ensuring that it's not just for people who are, visitors to the area, but in fact for residents. So this ferry landing is in the location that it is specifically to support residents who are going to be commuting from the western portion of Coney Island, where it's not really that close to the subway, into Manhattan.
Even with that in mind, the location has not been met with widespread approval.
There was an aniline dye factory. There was this cement plant, scrap metal yards. They used to build Navy destroyers there and other ships and break them apart years later. All of this is in the bed of Coney Island Creek. The sediments remain, and they are a historical legacy of contamination.
That's Ida Sanoff, a resident of the peninsula for over 40 years, and executive director of the conservationist group Natural Resources Protective Association. Her concern is that the dredging of the creek would leave all these contaminants exposed in an area where people swim, fish, and even conduct baptisms. Wong says the EDC has got that covered.
We are using things like an environmental bucket, which helps ensure that contaminated water doesn't get back out into the open water that we're working within. We also are using a turbidity curtain, which will help ensure that anything that is moved is going to settle down before we mobilize away from the site. Is going to be one that's done responsibly. We know and care a lot about the creek. We've been in touch with the community for a long time now, and definitely hear the concerns and are making sure that we are working closely with our contractors to ensure that this is going to be done in as ecologically sensitive a manner as possible.
All this is happening while the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, is examining water samples to determine if the creek can be designated a Superfund site because of high levels of mercury and other pollutants. If it is, work must stop immediately. But until that happens, construction continues with the goal of opening in the fall, an idea that does not sit well with Denson.
That's the sad thing. Who's going to, once this is put in operation, who's watching out for the public interest, public safety?
For Diverse City, I'm Craig Thompson.